Hello and welcome to today's broadcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to briefly cover Mike Lee and the not-so-secret Republican plot to reduce, cut, sunset both Social Security and Medicaid. And for the first piece of evidence, I have a video recording, a hot mic, capturing Senator Mike Lee, Republican senator for Utah, putting out his thoughts on the matter. Let's have a listen to Senator Mike Lee.
I'm here right now to tell you one thing that you probably haven't ever heard from a politician. It will be my objective to phase out Social Security, to pull it up by the roots. I'm here right now
Let's hear it
to
again.
tell you one thing that you probably haven't ever heard from a politician. It will be my objective to phase out Social Security, to pull it up by the roots.
There you go. Oops, it's just going to keep playing it until I press stop. But that's okay. It's good to have the exposure to the Republican plan consistent with the Republican ideology of depleting. Hey, Christopher, depleting the accumulated wealth of the working class, the middle classes in the United States, to effectively transfer wealth to the uber wealthy, to the exploitatively wealthy, to the aristocracy of America, by phasing out, as Mike Lee termed it, Social Security. They want to cut government expenditure unless it's the military. And I would imagine the police as well, because they're keen to protect their own property, but they're also keen to have everybody else be desperate enough to accept any working conditions and any crumbs of salary and wage that the ruling class deem themselves generous enough to offer. So, hey, if I sound like a communist, let me just disavow communism. It's, from my perspective, it's an untenable system of government that inevitably leads to a bureaucratic consolidation of power that becomes authoritarian if it doesn't start off as authoritarian. It claims to be a voice for the people, but communism is a way to get industrialized murder happening at large scale, to have the death of millions on your conscience. So no, I'm not in favor of communism. I'm just arguing that there is a balance of power, and when power is concentrated in the hands of the wealthy, the appropriate response is not to try and line them up for the guillotine, as many communists, whether jokingly or passionately, insist is a good idea. The idea is to try and use democratic means, to use the will of the people, not a mobocracy. I learned that word from Abraham Lincoln today, reading his speeches. Not a mobocracy, but the weight of the will of the people, to using the mechanisms of a democracy to either vote out the type of people who uphold aristocratic power grabs. I'm going for aristocratic because oligarch is not as popular a word as you might think. It's not as popularly understood. Whereas the aristocracy, people tend to know what kings and queens are, and lords and ladies. So that's my wheelbarrow to push for the day.
You probably haven't ever heard from a politician. It will be my objective to
phase out
Social Security.
Why would he want to say something like that? He's saying it to his most devoted supporters because it's a secret. Republican policy ideas that aren't popular have to be kept secret and have large fabricated culture war campaigns to deflect from. So what are their unpopular policies trying to kill off entitlements, such as Social Security, Medicaid, things that people have paid taxes to support in the reasonable expectation that America, like other highly developed nations, will have systems and strategies to help care for those in need, the vulnerable, the elderly, people who need medical care, just to keep together a nation that you can be proud of, a nation that looks after its own. And of course, the argument often used to rile up racists is that, well, it's not looking after our own if you go and let immigrants move into the country, and that should be reconsidered. And they don't want to admit they're opposed to immigration by any means, so they often complain or get overexcited about immigrants who come over the border between Mexico and the United States. Now, Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, apparently pointed out yesterday that the economy has likely suffered from a reduced amount of immigration, that because of the COVID-19 measures ostensibly taken to protect America, that there's been a depressed level of demand and a depressed level of economic activity to a degree. I mean, a lot of the economy is flourishing because America has a Democratic president, and Democratic presidents believe in the ideology of invest for success. They invest in the United States people, and they invest in United States infrastructure. In fact, maybe I'm going to write that phrase down. Invest for success. It sounds like dressed for success, but it's actually an appropriate use of government. Whereas Republicans don't believe in invest for success. Big picture, they're like, let the NRA donate money to you and keep arguing for their agenda of more guns in more people's hands. And another phrase I learned today was adult tantrums. And it's a great phrase. Seems like I'm being tangential here, but if you believe, as I do, that adults are highly susceptible to tantrums when they don't get their own way, or when they feel unworthy, or a host of grief or shame or anger emotions, they can throw tantrums just as much as children can do. Their tantrums might be expressed by tailgating another car driver and swearing at them and raising their middle finger. The tantrums might be ignoring somebody they love or dismissing them when they try to discuss how they feel. There's a whole spectrum of ways that can conceivably describe as adult tantrums. And because adults are so capable of poor behavior and tantrums, just as children are, because not everybody's learned to self-regulate or self-soothe appropriately, and some people's expectations of power and control are unreasonable, so they're often disappointed and angry. Those people do not need access to a host of unsecured guns. If they have a gun, it needs to be secured so that they can access it in case of an emergency. But the very presence of guns gives rise to a lot of those emergencies. And researchers have illustrated that women who buy guns for their own protection are more likely than not to have, not more likely than not, but run an increased risk of having that gun physically taken from them and used against them in a domestic violence incident or even a home invasion incident. If you have a gun because you think you can be physically overpowered, you can be physically overpowered and then shot by the gun that you acquired to protect yourself. And that's just the laws of physics, man. People who are stronger than you can take things from you. And you can be, psychologically, you can be taken by surprise. You can be intimidated. There's all manner of ways in which somebody can snatch a weapon from you. Christopher wants to know, out of curiosity, has there ever been a nation that functioned under combined democratic and communist principles? Or are the two far too opposite to coexist? Just curious. It's a good question. I would argue that socialist democracy happens. Well, democratic socialism? There's often democratic socialist parties. There's a continuum. It's easy to condemn outright communism because that's the one Stalinist Russia, Communist China under Mao, where you've really seen how the mass education programs, the centralized government controlling all industry has really been a gateway power trip that's resulted in mass famines and mass murder. That people who get so much power because they represent all the people, but not in a democratic way, are likely to abuse that power and are likely to have intimidated the people close to them out of ever giving feedback. People don't tell despots the truth. They don't tell them when their agricultural schemes are failing. They don't tell them that people are starving to death, or if they do, power-drunk despots have developed sufficient callousness that they don't care, because there's no mechanisms for accountability in a entrenched communist system. You don't have elections. You just have communist leaders who conflate themselves with the country, and they say, I am the people, I am the nation. Question me and you are questioning, you are the opposite of a patriot, you are a traitor. And Trump shows signs of the same type of despotic behavior. He hugs flags, he talks about himself in the third person in a way that implies, if you're against him, oh, you don't like Trump, you don't like America. So he conflates his enemies list with people who are against America, according to him. And when you recite your list of enemies in an almost ritualized manner, blah, blah, this person's against me, this person's against Trump, you are strengthening a bond between you and your audience of loyalists who have decided you are the country, and you are also like their personal savior, and you are relatable, and therefore your enemies are their enemies. And they will attack the Capitol. They'll give death threats out to any person named as an enemy by Trump. Look at the dude who mailed bombs to former Democratic presidents and to media figures because Trump had spoken critically of them. So Trump speaks critically of someone, they're an enemy of Trump, therefore they're an enemy of a Trump cultist. So I have to go. I've been working on a piece today. I wonder if I'll read a tiny bit of it to you guys, and you can tell me what you think. All right. I wrote, so Trump has been using his floundering social media platform to hint that his likely presidential primary rival, Ron DeSantis, has tendencies to fraternize inappropriately with teenage girls. Trump has posted verbal attacks against a special prosecutor, Jack Smith, a man charged with investigating alleged Trump crimes. Trump has also resumed accusing and attacking two former Georgian election workers, Lady Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss. So a future rival, a current prosecutor, and two Black women who counted votes in 2020. One of these things is not like the other, to draw on a stored bank of sayings from Sesame Street. Two real and direct connections to Trump, prompting him to embark on a campaign of impugning and defaming those who threaten his ability to hold high office and or stay out of jail. And then one indirect connection, election workers, vote counters, who helped to do the work for American democracy, work done during the high tide moment of a pandemic, and work done prior to any broad distribution of a vaccine, carrying with it the promise of reduced risk of death. Yet all three attacks help Trump advance his personal brand of victimization. Victimization by the establishment, victimization by the deep state, to the audience with the most receptivity for this narrative. Because Trump is adept at exploiting certain American vulnerabilities, and using those vulnerabilities to better sell variations of the same story of victimhood to those Americans who are primed to capital B believe. Anyway, I've got to work on it some more. But thank you so much to those who've tuned in today. I hope it's been of interest to you. Please tune in with suggestions or recommendations or feedback if you have any. Thank you to those regular viewers and patrons, and thank you also to any replay viewers. All the best. Take care.